5 days. Neither thought the other had survived.
I said to him, I was just wondering what I can tell your wife, your new wife. Because I didn't know he was survived. And he said to me, I was wondering what I'm going to tell your mother.
Instead, Bunai, who's on the left, forced Centazzo to eat. Centazzo had lost 40 pounds over the 5 days. A reporter snapped this photo. The image would become symbolic of the survivor bond in the years to come. The war was soon over, and there was jubilation in the streets. Victory over Japan was the headline. But there was no overlooking the tragedy beneath it. Cruisers sunk. 880 men had died, and someone would have to be held accountable. Captain McVay, seen here a few days after being rescued, was a convenient target. 2 of the top 3 admirals in the Navy, the legendary Chester Nimitz and Raymond Spruance, supported McVay. But the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Ernest King, outranked them both. King ordered a court-martial of McVay. Some believe King was seeking revenge for an incident years before.
King and a few other junior officers had managed to slip some unsavory girls aboard ship. And because of that, my grandfather reprimanded them, and it went in his record. King was not one to forget a grudge at all, and he got back at my grandfather by ordering the court-martial against Dad. It was as simple as that.
McVay became the only World War II captain to be court-martialed for losing his ship. He faced 2 charges: hazarding the ship for failing to zigzag before the torpedoes hit, also failing to give the order to abandon ship. At the court-martial in Washington, D.C., survivors testified that McVay had indeed given the fateful order to abandon ship.
More than a dozen people heard it. I did.
Did it get passed around?
It got passed around, as far as I know.
Do you think he's unfairly criticized on this count?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Survivors were horrified when the Navy called Captain Hashimoto, the I-58 commander, to testify against Captain McVay. Never before had such a thing happened, an enemy officer testifying against an American. But the strategy backfired. Hashimoto unwittingly helped McVay by testifying what any good submariner knew, that zigzagging was an ineffective defense against submarines.
He flat out said, it might have changed the length of time it took me to sink her by 2 minutes. Zigzagging would not have made any difference whatsoever.
Most believed there was no way McVay would be convicted. The verdict was stunning. Guilty of the more serious charge, hazarding his ship, failing to zigzag. The sentence, a demotion. Innocent of the second charge, failing to give the order to abandon ship. But it didn't matter. McVay's Navy career was over. McVay would never be the same. He was hounded by hate mail from a small group of families who had lost loved ones in the sinking. His son believes he was haunted by guilt, the guilt of a skipper who survives the loss of his ship.
I think that he always felt that he should have gone down with the ship. And it was not his option. He was actually washed overboard. He didn't jump over or anything. He was washed overboard.
In 1958, a new book, Abandoned Ship, which was recently updated and re-released, was published. It was a watershed moment. After years of silence, survivors talked about their nightmare for the first time. In 1960, they staged their first reunion, persuading McVay to attend. He was stunned by their devotion and support.
And when he saw all of us standing and cheering, we thought it would change him. But evidently it didn't work.
It didn't. On November 6, 1968, Charles Butler McVay shot and killed himself outside his farmhouse in Litchfield, Connecticut. A toy sailor was found in his hand. Captain McVay died without knowing the full story of the Indianapolis. Shocking new facts began to emerge in 1990 with another book, Fatal Voyage, which is being updated and re-released this year. It was revealed that the Japanese submarine Captain Hashimoto had sent a message saying he had sunk a large American ship, a message that the U.S. Navy intercepted but ignored. The book also revealed that Navy intelligence knew that the I-58 and one other Japanese submarine were operating in the path of the Indianapolis and that a U.S. destroyer had been sunk in this area only days before. Some believe McVay was not told this critical information because doing so would compromise a secret, the secret that America had broken the Japanese naval code. Centazzo will never forgive the U.S. Navy for this.
You have to be an admiral? A captain isn't high enough? A captain of a ship that's going out to sea? You can't tell them there's submarines out there?
In 1996, an unlikely new player emerged. 12-year-old Hunter Scott of Pensacola, Florida, became fascinated with the USS Indianapolis after doing a school project about the ship. He attended a reunion, questioned survivors. They told him they believed their captain had been made a scapegoat and they hoped to exonerate him. Reporters found the boy and the story irresistible.
I'm here to erase all mention of the court-martial and conviction from Captain McVay's naval records and get a presidential unit citation for the USS Indianapolis and her crew.
Scott and a small group of survivors began lobbying members of Congress to exonerate Captain McVay. They didn't find a sympathetic ear until they called Senator Bob Smith of New Hampshire, a Vietnam Navy veteran.
If a bunch of Navy guys want to see me that had their ship sunk, you bet I'll see them. So I did.
He believed they made a compelling case for clearing McVay's name. Smith persuaded a skeptical Senator John Warner, a former Navy secretary, to take an unusual step. Warner hauled top Navy brass before a Senate hearing to re-examine the conviction of Captain McVay more than half a century before.
Why was he zigzagging during the day?
Senator Smith took action, introducing this resolution in Congress. In light of information not available to the court-martial, Captain McVay should be exonerated for the loss of the Indianapolis and so many of her crew.
I'm not rewriting history. I'm correcting it. There's a difference. There was an error made. It was an error. And so if you make an error, you correct the error.
Support for exonerating McVay came from a surprising source. Captain Hashimoto, commander of the I-58, then 90 years old, living a quiet life in Japan as the caretaker of a Shinto shrine. Just before his death, in a remarkable letter to Senator Warner, he wrote, "I join with the brave men who survived in urging your national legislature to clear their captain's name." Last October, Hashimoto and the survivors got their wish. The House and Senate passed the Smith resolution, and President Clinton signed it. But the Navy wasn't budging. Its response? Reviews have supported the fairness and legality of the court-martial. No further action is appropriate. Senator Smith was furious.
If the United States Navy wants us to dig into what really happened, and we want to find out who's culpable, well, then they better find their files.
The Navy refused our repeated requests for an interview, but retired Admiral Brent Baker, the former longtime chief spokesperson for the Navy, did speak with us. Baker is now dean of the Boston University College of Communication.
That ship was lost. People were killed and died. Captain McVay was the commanding officer. You cannot change today or tomorrow the accountability of a commanding officer of a ship. It's sacred, it's important, and it's serious business.
Captain McVay's son isn't surprised by any of this.
There's no saying I grew up with it. There's the right way, the wrong way, and the Navy way. And you never ask. If you're in the Navy way, that's the way it's done.
Indiana Congressman Barron Hill thought he saw another way. He sent this letter to President Clinton last December requesting a posthumous pardon of Captain McVay. The president refused. Incredulous survivors saw the controversial fugitive Mark Rich being pardoned, but their dead captain ignored. They felt forgotten all over again. But the refusal was a relief to McVay's son.
Pardon implies you have done something wrong, and that I'm pardoning you. I do not feel now that my father did anything wrong.
The Indianapolis Survivors Group has fired a new and perhaps final salvo in their long, unfinished battle. They've launched a new grassroots campaign on their website, encouraging people to contact President Bush and the Secretary of the Navy, urging them to remove Captain McVay's conviction from his record. While survivors fight to exonerate their dead captain, they also fight lifelong personal battles. Dr. Lewis Haynes, who had a distinguished medical career after the war, is plagued by guilt. Guilt that the cholera shots he gave the crew the day of the disaster made them less alert.
That's why we were lax. That's why he was lax. It might have been my fault. Do you follow me?
Do you really think so?
I'm not sure, but I've always felt that.
Survivor reunions are tough for Frank Centazzo. He sees old friends, but something is missing.
There's a hole in my heart that doesn't feel like it's going to fill up until I hear the words that they wrongfully convicted him.
Bob Bunai's fight is to remind Americans the price paid to deliver the first atomic bomb and end the war.
880 men died at the very dawn of victory. And now even time, 55 years, refuses to heal the mental scars of that tragic event.
The scars and the pain are the price paid by every survivor of war. But most of the 124 remaining survivors of the USS Indianapolis say their pain will only be eased when the name of their captain, Charles McVay, is cleared.